So, this is you. Your thoughts and feelings become the enemy and they trap you inside your mind. Now, there was once a very wise man that said, we suffer more in imagination than what we do in reality. And this is 100% true, because there's something called the negativity bias. It's why we are much more concerned about the things we might lose than the things we might gain. It also means that we become more susceptible and vulnerable to negative thought patterns because we hyperfixate on the things that are not working, the things that are frustrating us and annoying us, compared to the things that are working. But the trouble is that these negative thought patterns are like a man with a shovel. So every time you have this same thought, it digs you just a little bit further into that trench and into that rut. And that certainly was my experience a couple months ago when I was going through the rut on my own. But thankfully, there are three science-based habits that you and I can do that in just as little as 3 days, if you actually practice this, you'll 10 times your mental clarity, you'll reduce your suffering, and you won't be so susceptible to the negativity bias anymore. So if that sounds good, let's get into the first habit. Thanks, Joshua boy. My friends, when we're going through a bit of a rough time and we feel like we're in a little bit of a rut, what is always missing? Happiness. And I think happiness is actually a skill that we can learn and get better at in the same way that money and wealth is a skill. People always tell you that you should have multiple income streams so you can protect yourself financially. And I think there is a very similar case to be said about happiness as well. There are two main streams contributing to your happiness the most. First, you have this glass here, which represents your goals, your dreams, the things that you're working towards, the progress that you see, and there's a sense of achievement around this. This is dopamine. But on the other hand, you also have this glass here. Now, this glass is all about how your life is going, how satisfied you are with your life. This is serotonin. If this is doing, then this is being. But let's also consider an example here. Imagine your cup being your savings account. It's also your happiness, but for the sake of it, it's also your savings account. So you're getting paid from your job and you feel pretty good about it. So we can add a little bit of money into that. And you also feel quite good about your life. You're satisfied. Things are going very well. So we can add a little bit in here too. But now imagine you are completely dissatisfied with your life. You don't want to be where you are. So this is gone. You don't have this anymore. And you go into work and your boss tells you that you're doing a terrible job and you get fired. So this is gone too. So now, all you're left with is just the little bit of money, the little bit of happiness left over in this cup. But because life is life, there are expenses. You have bills to pay, food to eat, rent, but you also have things that are taken away from your happiness because life is full of pain and suffering. So over time, this actually decreases. And then you become a depressed motherfucker like me. Now, the question then becomes, how do I keep these streams of happiness flowing into this cup? So a couple of videos ago, we talked about the dopamine side of things, having seasons of intensity and creating projects that inspire passion and perseverance. So watch that video later if you haven't already seen it. This video is all about this cup here. How can we become more satisfied with our lives? And that brings me to the first habit, which is gratitude. Let's get it. If you are feeling pretty terrible about your life, it's because you have forgotten about the things that you do have. Remember that even on the darkest days, the blue sky is always there. You just need to look through the clouds. And this is exactly what gratitude does. It gets us to remind ourselves about the things that are actually going well, the things that we can be happy about and grateful for, rather than focusing on the things that are not working, that are not going well, that are frustrating us and stressing us out. And I also can appreciate that this is a lot easier said than done, because when we are in this negative state, we have a tendency to focus on the negative things because of the negativity bias. But that just emphasizes why it's so important to have a habit, to have a practice that you come back to that actually gets you to remind yourself on what is going well. And I'll give you an example. A couple months ago, I was going through a rut of my own. I was so focused on the things that are not doing very well right at the moment, like my YouTube growth, like some stuff happening at work or being injured in the gym. In the projects that I had, I just wasn't making any progress. And that's very dissatisfying for me. And also because I'm very goal driven, very focus driven, it's very easy for me to be dissatisfied of where I am. It's also what I talked about in the last video about having the hero's mindset. I recognize the dissatisfaction and identify the problem, and I go work towards the solution. But that also means that I don't really appreciate the things that I actually do have and the things that are going well. So a few years ago, about 7 years ago, I started practicing gratitude properly, formally. And I did that, where is it? Here it is. I did that with this gratitude journal here. And I found this to be quite useful because it gives you prompts about questions to answer. So I'm just going to open up to a random day. That's a bad example. Okay, so this is the better one. So the first question is, right now I'm feeling. And then it wants you to articulate a little bit more about why you feel this way. It gets you to answer a more difficult question. What made you feel happy today? And there are going to be some days where you just feel like there wasn't any. But those are the days where you really need to find what it was, because that's going to teach your brain to start scanning for the things that are going well, the things that you can be grateful for. It's the opposite of becoming bitter and resentful. When I practiced this for many days in a row, I began to actually experience gratitude in real time. I'll be able to go out for walks in the sun and just look around and soak up the natural beauty and just feel happy about what I'm doing and where I am. It's a very similar feeling when I go to the grocery store sometimes. I look around and I see all this food. Like anything I could ever want is here in this store, convenient for me to buy. And it's something that we all should be quite grateful for. Nowadays, I don't journal in this book anymore. I have a Notion template where I just note down a couple things, a couple sentences about what went well today. And I try to do this as regularly as I can, but I make the particular intention that when things aren't going well, this is what I'm doing, because I need to retrain my brain again to look for the things that are doing okay. And it's also promotes serotonin in the brain. This is why it actually feels good to practice gratitude. So if you want to improve your life, improve your mental clarity in 3 minutes, gratitude is how you do it, without a question. But with that said, let's get on to habit number 2. You feel terrible about your life because you allow the entropy of your mind to increase for far too long. And if you're a regular viewer of the channel, thank you for being here. But you would also know that I am a huge advocate that entropy is the biggest enemy we face in our lives. Entropy is the reason why things become spread out and messy over time if we leave them how they are. And the same thing is true for your mind. If you don't do mental upkeep, if you don't do mental exercises, this thing will become messy, disorganized, and introduce a lot of chaos into your mind. So if you want to reduce the chaos in here, if you want to bring order to the disordered, the only way to decrease entropy locally inside of here is to increase the entropy of around you. I think a phrase that I said a while ago is, if you want to improve your life, then you need to burn more calories. And this is 100% true. When it comes down to burning more calories for the mind, a very good exercise to do is journaling. Writing down things forces you to understand what you're feeling better. And if you go and watch a lot of other YouTube videos about journaling, which I haven't done, I'm just making an assumption here, I think they'll probably give you long-winded, maybe 7, 8 different exercises you can do to achieve this reduction in entropy of your mind. And I'm also guilty of this in the past. It's one of the reasons why I never liked journaling before, is because I will write too much up front, get bored, and then never stick with the practice. And that's what we're really trying to do here, remember? We're trying to make a habit. I recently read a book called Essentialism, and he actually has a brief topic about journaling. Greg recommends that we should write less than we feel like writing. We should pretend that we are the journalists reporting on our day. We're trying to hunt for the headline of the day. What was the thing that occupied our mind? What did we think about the most during the day? And that's the thing that you want to write down at the end of the day when you do this gratitude exercise. This is exactly what I have set up in my Notion template. I ask myself, what went well today and what was the headline for today? When I write about this headline of the day, I'm writing it from the perspective of what would I want to see the most when I come back to this sometime in the future? What would I like to reflect on the most? And I think that's a very good frame to go by. And if you only do a paragraph, just a few sentences on this, and you do this regularly, you'll begin to see the chaos in your mind decreasing, because you'll be able to understand what you're thinking better and what you're feeling better. And maybe then you can have more insight into what solutions you can implement to actually solve the problems that you're having. Because I truly believe that you feel terrible because you have problems and you're not solving them. Otherwise, if you just focus on solving problems, you turn yourself into a frantic mode and you go solve problems, but you're not really getting yourself anywhere because you're not focusing on the right things. I went on a little bit of a rant there. The ranting is becoming more normal for the channel, and I kind of like it. I kind of like ranting, guys. So yeah, on to number 3. You feel terrible about your life because you're experiencing these negative thoughts and feelings, but you never allow yourself to be present with them. You are always distracting yourself with whatever vice or poison you want to pick. And look, man, I get it. It's very easy for me to distract myself with my phone. I don't even know where my phone is, but it's very easy to distract myself with it when I'm feeling rather negative, or to distract myself with the TV or whatever else I want to choose on that particular occasion. But the problem is that if we're always distracting ourselves, we never give ourselves the space and the time required to actually process how we feel. And consequently of this, we begin to form the story that our thoughts and feelings are the enemy. But in reality, they're not. See, thoughts are just thoughts. Feelings are just feelings. They can't do anything and there's nothing to be afraid of. So the third habit is meditation, because meditating forces you to be present with whatever you're experiencing at that given time. When you meditate regularly, you begin to understand that these thoughts and feelings, they're not you. They're just something you experience in that given moment. And then you can decide whether you want to engage with them or not. They can happen to you without you having to entertain them. They can be there and you can be present with it without you having to actually do something about it. Your emotions do not have to dictate your actions. And now, I feel obliged to say, as I mentioned many times in the past, when I do feel negative, when I have this craving of something that I probably shouldn't do, maybe 1 or 2 times out of 10, I let myself indulge in it. But the other 8 or 9 times, I stay consistent. Because that's what we're aiming at here. We're aiming at imperfect consistency, not absolute consistency. Because absolute consistency is not sustainable. And if you feel like if you mess up once and you do this thing, everything else falls apart. And it isn't that case. But meditation is the practice that makes you more aware of what you're feeling. And it makes you more capable of dealing with these negative emotions in real time. And I made a full video about this meditation technique before, so I recommend watching that. It'll be somewhere on screen here. But to give you a little bit more context, a little bit more background about my experience with meditation, is that 7 years ago, I started meditating for the first time, and I knew absolutely nothing about meditation. I was a complete beginner. And that's why I found it very useful to follow the basics course in the Headspace app. It taught me what meditation was and what it wasn't. It taught me how I should meditate, and that there isn't really any right or wrong way for meditation, as long as you're being present with what you're doing. And for me, when I first started, it was first thing in the morning after a cold shower. Now I don't meditate regularly, but when I'm going for a rut or a negative time, I make the intent to increase the meditation frequencies. That way I'm forcing myself to be with my negative emotions rather than distracting myself. And that's it, guys. 3 habits to 10x your mental clarity, to reduce your suffering, and to start enjoying life more. Gratitude, so you can offset those negative feelings. Journaling, so you can reduce the entropy in your mind and begin to understand how you feel. And meditation, so you can sit with, be present with those negative emotions and not act on them. To realize that they don't have so much power over you and you're the one in control here. So if you want to improve your life in as little as 3 days, these are the 3 habits that I recommend to you. These are 3 habits that get me out of the rut every time I find myself in one. The same 3 habits that got me out of the rut just a couple months ago. The key thing here is that these are habits. These are practices. So you need to decide when you're going to do them, and you need to do them regularly. I would recommend meditating first thing in the morning for 5 to 10 minutes. And then at night, stack the journaling exercise and the gratitude exercise together. Simply do what I do. Just note down what went well and what the headline for today is. And that should only take you 3 to 5 minutes. So with a collective of, let's say, 10 to 15 minutes, you will 10x your mental clarity in as little as 3 days. And that to me just sounds amazing. And next week is the 4th video in this series of how to get out of the rut. We're going to put everything together and make a plan for the next 7 days so you can change your life. And it's exactly what I've done many times before. So if you're watching this in the future, click it now. Otherwise, I'll see you next week. Bye.